US politics into disrepute, his career was destroyed by not one, but two bizarre scandals.
They say one picture is worth much more than 1,000 words. Am I right? Well, have you ever wondered why a single picture can hold so much power and meaning? The science behind how these little pieces of paper with our images affect us so deeply is quite challenging. Imagine having a bad hair day, then one of your friends takes a quick snap of you. How would you feel? Unless you are a natural, you'll probably not like the picture, right? Everybody has their own bad picture moments, but some are simply out of this world. Imagine a single photograph turning your life upside down. From legal troubles to personal turmoil, today we will be looking at how some of the wrongly timed or badly taken photos actually influenced and even ruined people's lives. The tragic photo of Ophelia. The history of paintings dates back thousands of years, reflecting the evolution of human creativity and culture. One such work of art is the Ophelia, one of the most popular pre-Raphaelite works in history. Now, if you were born in the past few years, you barely know what Ophelia is all about. But have no worries. That is why I'm here. Like the painting of the Mona Lisa, Ophelia is a significant masterpiece, especially in the realm of painting and art. The painting was part of the original Henry Tate gift in 1894 and is known to be one of the best-known illustrations from Shakespeare's play Hamlet. The painting is of a woman, Ophelia, who succumbed to her tragic demise as she fell into a stream and drowned. The painting, directly from nature itself, opens up our minds to a world of imagination with its great attention to detail. Best known for painting subjects from modern life and literature, often using historical costumes, Ophelia's painting is one of Sir John Everett Millet's most unique works. Yes, the painting is straight-out gorgeous. However, what makes a painting one of a kind is the story behind the painting. Most of us are familiar with the works of William Shakespeare, the poet who used very difficult English words, right? Well, Ophelia happens to be one of Shakespeare's major stars. Ophelia is a character in William Shakespeare's drama Hamlet. The play was scripted in the late 1500s and is about a young noblewoman of Denmark, the daughter of Polonius and the wife-to-be of Prince Hamlet, who runs mad due to Hamlet's actions, which in turn leads to her drowning. In the play, Ophelia is an obedient daughter to her father and well-loved by the other characters. Her obedience is evident even after she finds love in one man, Hamlet. And when her father disapproves of their union and asks her to stop seeing Hamlet, she does so with no questions asked. Moreover, when her father, Polonius, asks her to arrange a meeting so he and King Claudius can spy on Hamlet, Ophelia, the obedient daughter, again fulfills her father's request, even though it involves being used as a pawn in their schemes. This extreme loyalty to her father has led many critics to term her as a foil to her brother Laertes and her ex Hamlet. Unlike Hamlet, who is portrayed to be rebellious and sometimes conflicted, Ophelia, on the other hand, remains submissive and obedient, contrasting sharply with his complex nature. So we know the story of Ophelia. However, it is a play, so how did Millet come up with the painting? According to history, Millet came up with the painting of Ophelia in two separate locations. It is said that Millet painted the landscape part of the painting outside, by the Hogs Mill River at Ewell in Surrey, England. The second phase of the portrait was painting the figure of Ophelia. This, unlike the landscape, he painted inside in his Gower Street studio in London. I guess Millet wanted extra motivation, right? According to history, during the 1800s, artists like Millet loved to paint most of their sketches outdoors. Was this some secret inspiration they didn't share with us? It turns out it was their source of inspiration, as they then took their sketches back to their studios to create from the sketches. However, what makes Ophelia unique is that, unlike the other painters who took their sketches inside, Millet painted the entire painting completely outdoors. No wonder it's so inspiring. The detail in the painting's landscape is straight out of this world. It is said that Millet, in fact, took more time painting the landscape than even painting Ophelia herself. Yes, we get the inspiration the outdoors gave Millet, but where did he get the image of the lady to play Ophelia? Another intriguing fact about the painting is that in contrast to Ophelia herself, the model who posed for the painting was much less noble than the character she was portraying. Elizabeth Siddal, the young woman who modeled for Millet, was 19 at the time and barely had any experience in the modeling industry. According to reports, Elizabeth was introduced to Millet by his friend Walter Deverell, who was also an artist working at a hat shop at the time. She came from a humble background, again contrary to the noble Denmark Ophelia. Working as an assistant to Walter at the hat shop, Elizabeth struggled to make ends meet, and the opportunity Millet offered came as a game changer for her. But who said art is all about the background? The beauty of Elizabeth, with her stunning looks and luscious red hair, was what drew Millet's attention to Elizabeth. To accurately capture the scene of Ophelia drowning in the river, Elizabeth had to lie in a bathtub filled with water. Can you imagine the heights Millet and Elizabeth had to reach for the painting to come out the way it did? Now, as you can imagine, this was Victorian times, and there were no heated bathtubs, so why didn't Elizabeth freeze from lying in the cold water? That's where the painter's ingenuity came into play. Millet had to put some oil lamps underneath the bathtub just to keep the water warm enough for Elizabeth not to freeze to death. Elizabeth sat in the bathtub for hours until the painting was complete. It could be a lie to think that this didn't have a serious toll on her physical health. As a matter of fact, after her modeling with Millet was over, Elizabeth was diagnosed with pneumonia. Considering it was during Victorian times, a serious illness such as this one had serious effects. Elizabeth had to live with this condition for the rest of her life, for during those times there was little to no treatment, especially for respiratory illnesses as grave as pneumonia. The doctors, in an attempt to save Elizabeth's life, gave her a prescription for laudanum, which was a combination of alcohol and illegal substances, both pretty addictive substances, don't you think? I wonder if it helps her or makes her situation even worse. Who knew that this once muse to many artists would end up an addict? That's right, though the laudanum gave Elizabeth relief from her pains, she was slowly getting hooked on opium, and in no time, she was an addict. The tragedy she was portraying while she posed for the Ophelia painting was slowly catching up to her. A few years later, Elizabeth's newly found fame had faded away, and dealing with her illness alone was getting to her. How tragic, a once amazing model, admired by many, now suffering all on her own. Who would come to her rescue? Sadly for the model, her challenges were far from over. She would later be faced with an unfortunate occurrence, one that goes beyond physical torture. While going through her darkest time yet, Elizabeth would soon find refuge in another pretty interesting man, Dante Gabriel Rossetti. Rossetti was an English poet who took a liking to Elizabeth's beauty and went ahead to court her. It sounds like, after a long and strenuous period alone, Elizabeth had now found her knight in shining armor, right? Well, that was far from the case. The two started their romantic relationship well, but as time went on, what seemed to be a break from her life turmoil slowly started to become nothing short of a nightmare. Rossetti knew of Elizabeth's illness and her addiction to opium, but he still asked for her hand in marriage. Maybe he was genuinely trying to show the young lady love, you know. At first he was, but after getting Elizabeth's hand, Rossetti stopped being the loving and compassionate husband Elizabeth thought him to be. Life seemed to be throwing the young model endless blows. Soon after her marriage, another stock of misfortune would come knocking on Elizabeth's doorstep. To add to the abusiveness of her husband, Elizabeth had another loss that would potentially lead to her death. She was pregnant with a child, but sadly for her, it died. She fell deeper into substances and alcohol, and soon after it is said that she died of an overdose of laudanum, which she deliberately took to poison herself. Just like Ophelia, whom she modeled for Millet, Elizabeth suffered the same fate. However, the torment didn't stop there. After her death, Rossetti felt overburdened by guilt because of how he treated his wife while she was still alive. He wrote a couple of poems for Elizabeth and sealed them into a notebook, which he would put in Elizabeth's casket for her to be buried with, a decision that the poet would later prove to regret. 7 years later, Rossetti seemed to regret this decision and made a choice to reclaim his notebook. Rossetti did the unthinkable just to feed his ego, an act that has received criticism all over. He dug out Elizabeth's body from her grave and retrieved his book of poems. Was this a noble thing to do? Elizabeth's life, just like Ophelia's, is a testament to how gruesome love can actually be. From wowing everyone with her beauty to losing it all in the end with no hopes of getting it back, Elizabeth had a tough life up until her death, adding much sorrow to the already sad painting of Ophelia. However, not all the cases we are going to look at today deserve the pity of the case of Ophelia or Elizabeth. Some are just silly mistakes that need reprimanding, like the next case, for example, Anthony Weiner's career-ruining selfie. They keep telling us not to post our business online because, as we know, the internet never forgets. You expect a political aspirant, especially one with a reputable background such as Anthony Weiner, to know this, right? I guess he had to learn this the hard way. When we talk about blowing things over, I guess Anthony Weiner is the perfect example. From a potential presidential candidate to an offender, this case is one of the reasons why we most certainly refrain from airing our business for the entire internet to see. On May 27, 2011, a former member of the United States House of Representatives from New York City did the unthinkable. While texting one of his sugar girls, Anthony Weiner accidentally posted a private picture of him on Twitter instead of sending it to the girl. If you know what I mean, you need prayers. The picture was of his erect penis concealed by boxer briefs. You didn't expect a congressman to be put out because of posting his smile now, did you? However, that wasn't the end of Anthony Weiner's troubles. In fact, they were just beginning. Knowing what he had done, former Congressman Anthony Weiner almost immediately took down the picture. But you know the internet, he was too late. No, 3 times late. The entire internet community was yet to find out the story thanks to a random Twitter user who, after seeing the picture, immediately took a screenshot of it and sent it to a very controversial blogger, Andrew Breitbart. Andrew Breitbart was credible as a conservative journalist, political commentator, and founder of Breitbart News. He was the perfect man to make the embarrassing pictures go viral, reaching even the most elite. Without wasting any time, Andrew Breitbart published them on his Big Government, a political website that had quite a following during those times. It didn't take long for the news of the photos to go viral, reaching even mainstream newsrooms such as CNN. They described the pictures as lewd photographs of a man bulge in underwear. So much for soiling our hard-earned credibility, am I right? Of course, Weiner wasn't going to let his credibility crumble before his eyes like that. But what could he do? He was now a laughingstock among his mates and had already lost the respect of those who looked up to him. Weiner held a bunch of interviews, at first trying to deny the allegations, but the disaster train had already left the station. There was nothing left for him to do but face the music. Weiner tried to convince the public that the photo might have been doctored by a rival politician, but all in vain. He went on to say, "Maybe it did start being a photo of mine and now looks something different, or maybe it is from another account." But what made the public ask a lot of questions about Weiner's denial of the allegations is that if honestly the photo was doctored by another political rival with the aim to tarnish his name, why didn't he ask the FBI or even the US Capitol Police to investigate the incident? In an attempt to defend his claims, Weiner told the press that he sought the help of a private investigator instead of the state investigators because he felt like the incident was more of a prank than a crime. Can you imagine the audacity of this man? However, Weiner did not lack his die-hard supporters, those willing to overlook the truth and shorn down everyone else just for a few coins, maybe. The bloggers claimed that Wolf, the Twitter user who initially screenshot Weiner's accidental post, and reporter Andrew Breitbart had plotted the entire thing and had planted the photo and message as part of a scheme to defame Weiner. At the time, the internet was torn on who to believe. Was their leader a pervert? Or was he an innocent man who has fallen victim to cyberbullying? However, the confusion didn't last long. Evidence would soon surface that would firmly pin Weiner to the allegations. Apparently, a group of conservatives were monitoring Weiner's conversations for at least 3 months. And what they gave out was shocking, especially coming from a guy who was soon expected to be a presidential aspirant. The conservatives noticed that not only was the representative engaging in dirty talks with girls, but he was involved with minors too. You heard me right, minors. According to the reports, in April, a 17-year-old girl from Delaware posted a tweet on a popular platform, X, exclaiming, "Seriously talking to Representative Weiner from New York right now? Like, is my life real?" This tweet on its own is disgusting, as it is incriminating. Credibility had to be proven, and that's when the police stepped in. They allegedly went to the girl's home to question her and her parents. The police, who were already aware of Weiner's contact with the girl, took it upon themselves to search the contents of the young lady's computers for any other incriminating evidence. As much as he tried to prolong it, Anthony Weiner's political career had come to an end. He was asked to resign, and you know why. No one is going to sit back and allow themselves to be led by an offender. Weiner, however, didn't just leave without an acknowledgement. He is known to date as the major political downfall in history. Imagine a single photograph that can change your life, your reputation, and even the way the world sees you. With this next story, it's to deny the power these little photographs hold. I know when I mention Nguyen Ngoc Loan, most of you don't even know who I am talking about. But not to worry. Up until this video, I didn't know of him either. The photo of Nguyen Ngoc Loan executing a foe. Nguyen Ngoc Loan was the police chief of Saigon during the period when Vietnam experienced a wave of coordinated surprise attacks by troops and members of the Viet Cong. This guerrilla force fought together with North Vietnam against South Vietnam, and whose actions during the war would leave him even more famous. It was 1968, the year of the Tet Offensive, a turning point in the Vietnam War. Born in 1930 in Hue, Vietnam, Nguyen Ngoc Loan was no ordinary police chief. He had close connections with Nguyen Cao Ky, South Vietnam's future Air Force chief and prime minister, and had received training as a pilot in Morocco. Backed by Ky, Loan rose through the ranks, serving as chief of the civilian and military police and a key figure in South Vietnam's Central Intelligence Organization. Yet over the decades, what the world fixated on didn't have much to do with Loan's climb to the pinnacle of organized crime or his hatred for foreigners. It was a brutal picture that was shot by a bystander in the middle of a busy Saigon street. Loan met Nguyen Van Lem, a Viet Cong officer who had been captured with identification near a mass grave. What happened next would leave a permanent mark on the popularity of Loan's for the longest time. Loan immediately shot Lem right there in the bustling street, aiming at the head. The shocking moment and even the photo were captured by a photographer from the Associated Press and transmitted, which, like wild forest fires, quickly spread all around the world. The picture of one man pointing a gun at the head of another man right before blowing his brains out is sure to leave a permanent mark, isn't it? For many, it became the embodiment of the brutal reality of the Vietnam War. Many people who saw the picture criticized Loan for the act, terming it as inhumane. But was Leon just a heartless soul with enraged hate for the Northerners? As many people, after seeing the photo, termed Loan a ruthless villain, what they didn't know is that Loan was not just a man of brutality. As a matter of fact, he was a Vietnam nationalist who believed in a country that was governed by its own people, resisting not only the communists but also the increasing American influence in the country. It's ironic because Loan, who had risked his own life to fight for the freedom of his country and its people, was now a villain and seen by the world as a symbol of Vietnam's darkest hour. Loan was just giving retribution for the lives of the family of his closest friend, who had been viscously murdered by the Viet Cong captive. And yet, he is the demon. His reputation was destroyed beyond repair, and the only way he thought he would escape was by moving to the United States. Maybe he would start afresh. After the war, Loan moved to the United States, far from the life he once knew, opening a humble pizza parlor near Washington, D.C. He had started making peace with the situation and was settling into his new home when, yet again, the actions of his past caught up with him. He was constantly attacked by the public because of his image. There was this one time when officers from immigration, who had noticed Loan from the photo, tried to deport him back to his country. If it wasn't for the intervention of the man who actually took the photograph, Loan would have been deported back to Vietnam. And no one knows what would have happened to him if he had actually been deported. I'm sure he could have been murdered or even tortured. Adams, the man who, to the infamous photograph, has since expressed his guilt and remorse for how an innocent documentation of the war turned an activist's life into a living hell, literally. In a conversation with a reporter years later, Adams expressed his remorse, saying that 2 people died that day. Lone killed the Viet Cong soldier, and he killed Lone with his camera. In just a fraction of a second, one photograph managed to freeze more than just time. It froze a man's fate forever. This was a stark reminder of how a single image, out of context, can redefine a life and rewrite history, away from the sad story of the end of the legacy of Vietnam freedom fighters. Imagine being thrust into the spotlight just for doing what you thought was right. George Holliday was an ordinary plumber living an ordinary life in Los Angeles, until one fateful night in 1991 changed everything. George Holliday's film that changed his life. On May 3, RD, 1991, at midnight, George Holliday and his wife Maria woke up to a helicopter's loud noise flying close to their Lakeview Terrace apartment in Los Angeles. Still half asleep and groggy, Holliday still felt like something big was going on outside. He began to feel around for his brand-new Sony camcorder, which he had bought to record his friend's marathon run. However, he was about to film an event that would spark one of the most intense moments in American history. When he got to his balcony, George Holliday saw a scene that was so gruesome that it made him shake a little. What he saw were 4 Los Angeles police officers surrounding a young black man who was later identified as Rodney King, lying on the ground trying to cover his head and face. The police officers clubbed him, kicked him, and even used a taser on him. George couldn't help, and he started rolling. A camcorder that was bought to film a proud moment instead captured 9 minutes of pure brutality. Life, for him and for the nation's conscience, would never be the same again. This 9-minute video sparked outrage. It was like throwing fuel on an already heated situation. How did the 9-minute recording impact George Holliday's life? The next morning, Holliday tried to call the Los Angeles Police Department to find out what had happened and whether Mr. King was all right. But instead of getting some news on the issue, he got hung up on it. So he did what anyone in the 90s might have done. He called a local TV station, KTLA, and handed over his tape, hoping that maybe justice would be served. He received $500 for the footage, but what he didn't know was that the station had already copied the tape and sent it to CNN. By the end of the day, the footage was everywhere. Every news network and in living rooms worldwide now knew the horrid incident that happened that fateful night. Maybe there will be a follow-up on the young black man, George hoped. During that time in the United States, the issue of racism was a simmering tension that permeated society, often unacknowledged by those in power, but painfully evident to those affected. George's video shed light on the issue, showing the grim truth of police violence against Black Americans. The clip triggered discussions about deep-rooted racism in the justice system of the United States. George Holliday went from an unknown plumber to a minor celebrity. He was getting calls from reporters around the clock, all inquiring about the incident. George later said that he had to change his phone number 3 times to try and avoid the paparazzi. However, despite the increasing fame, George didn't get rich. He only made a maximum of $10,000 from licensing his video. In addition to the money, he got a deal with Spike Lee for Malcolm X. He tried to sue KTLA and other stations for $100 million for sharing his tape without his consent, but the judge threw the case out. That was pretty dumb of him, don't you think? Considering he was one plumber fighting a legal battle against multiple news houses. He even tried to sell the camera in 2020 for a cool $225,000, but there were no takers. It seems like recording the video and making it public was the start of his financial problems. Although the video played a crucial role in the 1992 trial of the 4 officers involved in the beating, the jury found 3 of the officers not guilty and declared a mistrial for the 4th officer due to, get this, lack of a unanimous decision from the jury. The ruling was catastrophic for Los Angeles, as the city was engulfed in 6 days of riots that resulted in 54 deaths and nearly $1 billion in damages. I guess the public was already growing tired of the ongoing police brutality. Holliday was deeply conflicted about the impact of his footage. On one hand, he believed that the footage he recorded was important because it brought to light the issue of police brutality. However, on the other hand, George felt uneasy because the release of his tape led to significant negative consequences in the state. He felt somehow responsible for the riots, destruction, and damage to the reputation of the Los Angeles Police Department. George Holliday never asked to be a part of any of this. He was only doing what he thought was right. Instead, he became a symbol of the power of citizen journalism and the importance of capturing the truth. His story stands as a reminder of the significant impact a single person can have when they simply press record. Maybe that's just how being the good guy doesn't always pay off. The next case on our list is one of comedian Kathy Griffin. However, nothing about the story is actually funny. It's in fact sad. We all know how comedians go the extra mile, pushing boundaries in order to make us laugh, but sometimes pushing too far can send them over the edge. That's what happened to Kathy Griffin in 2017, in a moment that turned her life and career upside down. The downfall of Kathy Griffin. Kathy Griffin has been entertaining the general public with her sharp wit and bold humor. However, in 2017, she decided to make a statement. She took a very controversial photo where she posed holding a fake severed head that resembled then-President Donald Trump. It was meant to be a daring joke, right? That, however, is not what the Hollywood community saw. Instead of laughs, Griffin found herself in the center of a media firestorm, turning her into the villain. Soon after posting the photo online, outrage swept across all social media platforms, TV screens, and political arenas. Both Trump supporters and critics came at Kathy, damning her picture. Many people felt as if the photo, which was supposed to be funny, crossed the line, and she was criticized for going too far, even for the sake of comedy. Her employers at the time, CNN, were not taking any chances. Griffin was almost immediately dropped from her New Year's Eve hosting gig on the channel, a role she'd held for over a decade. Kathy really messed with the wrong leader. The photo was unexpectedly the end of her. Her stand-up gigs brought no audience, and she found herself blacklisted from many entertainment circles. She even lamented that she frequently received death threats for her actions that one time. Kathy felt like what she did made her the enemy of the people. She decided to publicly apologize to Trump and the general public in the midst of the chaos that had arisen. She acknowledged that she had gone too far, but the damage was done. Her apology wasn't enough to calm the already riled-up Trump supporters. As a result, her career began to plummet, and Kathy Griffin doubled down. She felt like the industry was out to get her. She even claimed to be the victim of political persecution, but no one was willing to listen. To them, she was the monster. The once bright star was now performing in places far from the spotlight stage she's used to, and even still, she struggled to find an audience. In one ill-fated photo shoot, Kathy Griffin went from comedy royalty to Hollywood outcast. These cases are a stark reminder that in today's world, just one image, just one click of the record button can ruin a career, change public perception, and redefine someone's life in the blink of an eye. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.